What is attention? Attention is actually not as easy to define as you might think. Within psychology, there are several models of attention and components of attention to consider. The first thing to really get across is that attention is an ability with normal variation within the population. Secondly, there are really three kinds of attention that one could consider. First, one can pay attention to something for a relatively long period of time, awaiting the occurrence of something. We call this type of attention vigilance. An air traffic controller might employ this type of attention, or a watchtower guard. Second, one can try to attend to specific things amidst many distracting things. This type of attention is called selective attention. This might be like trying to discern between the gulls and the pelicans in a large flock of birds. The final type of attention is trying to split your attention between several things at the same time. This is called divided attention. This might be like when you are having a conversation with someone while also driving a car. All of these types of attention can be impaired for someone with ADHD. However, to keep things simple, let us focus on the behaviors that we might observe that tell us when someone is inattentive. The behaviors might look like poor persistence of effort, poor ability to keep paying attention for a long period of time. Recall that this is vigilance. Or paying attention to something that you're not supposed to, or something that is less important given the context. We call this distractibility. Distractibility would impact both selective and divided attention. Other terms that might be associated with being inattentive could include being sluggish, passive, hypoactive, can't focus, daydreaming, slow-moving mentally, prone to stare, confused, or in a fog. Because attention is required in order to remember things, many children will also appear forgetful or disorganized. For many children diagnosed with ADHD, inattentiveness can be the primary symptom set to such an extent that they are considered to have the inattentive subtype of ADHD. What is impulsivity and hyperactivity? In the video, you learn more about one of these constructs, impulsivity. You learn that impulsivity means that a child acts before thinking. You also learn that for very young children, some impulsivity can be normal, and self-control can be fostered through games and activities. However, for children with ADHD, impulsivity and hyperactivity may be more severe and may not respond the same way as you saw in the video. First, the impulsive child or teen may demonstrate difficulty with stopping themselves from certain behaviors and might not be able to quickly and easily stop or start behaviors in response to external cues. The impulsive child may be unable to wait their turn or wait for a reward. We call this an inability to delay gratification. In addition, an impulsive child will have trouble interrupting or stopping something that they are already doing. We call this tendency perseveration. This is why ADHD children may tend to continue to misbehave despite getting feedback about their behavior or even with negative consequences. In the next part, we will discuss strategies to accommodate these natural difficulties that children with ADHD face. The second question is, what is hyperactivity? To be hyperactive means to be more active, restless, fidgety when compared to same-aged peers. For the ADHD child, this might appear like they are driven by a motor, or they can't stop moving, or they're constantly fidgeting. For the ADHD child, their high activity level should be able to be seen across settings. However, the extent of activity might have natural variations, rather than a constant high level of activity. It is important to note that hyperactivity levels in ADHD tends to decline with age, while impulsivity tendencies remain the same. Thus, younger children might be more observably hyperactive compared to teens with ADHD. Some research suggests that teens might become more verbally hyperactive. Children who have hyperactivity and/or impulsivity as the major symptom without sufficient inattentiveness being observable might be considered to have the hyperactive impulsive subtype of ADHD. Children who have all three core problems, that is, they are inattentive, impulsive, and hyperactive, are considered to have the combined subtype of ADHD. Without going into too much detail, there are some important facts that might be useful for you to know. To learn more facts about ADHD, feel free to click on any of the provided links on this page. For Part 1, it is important to recognize that ADHD is a fairly common disorder affecting between 3 and 9.9% of the population. Probably around 5% is a reasonable estimate of the prevalence in the population. It is important to recognize that ADHD impacts boys to a far greater extent, with some estimates that it impacts boys at an 8-to-1 ratio compared to girls. Another important fact is that ADHD seldom occurs without other related problems. Having a coexisting problem together with ADHD is more the norm than the exception. Nearly 80% of children with ADHD would be diagnosed with some other disorder at the same time. The two most common co-occurring disorders that exist with ADHD include anxiety problems and a pattern of oppositional and defiant behavior called oppositional defiant disorder, or ODD for short. In fact, ODD is so common it co-occurs in nearly 40% of ADHD cases, while anxiety co-occurs in 34% of cases. When there are coexisting problems with ADHD, typically children display greater severity of symptoms. When it comes to treatment, the first and most well-known treatment option is some form of stimulant medication. While stimulant medications are not without controversy and debate, the research generally supports the effectiveness of medications to reduce the core symptoms of ADHD. In terms of treatment for ADHD, it is important to have a basic awareness of the primary treatments available and the evidence for their effectiveness. The first two primary treatments that have strong evidence of their positive impact with ADHD children is some form of stimulant medication and parent training. Please note that when we are talking about effectiveness, we mean that they work to reduce symptoms of ADHD. This is the case for stimulant medications. Parent training is simply about training parents in behavioral management strategies. Many of these strategies are part of the skills section in Part 3. Finally, there is also good evidence that group-based and intensive social skills training can assist ADHD children in those particular areas. If you wish, you may also click on the word mindfulness and EEG neurofeedback to read further on these promising new treatments. Both have shown some preliminary evidence of effectiveness. The appeal of these approaches is that they provide non-medical treatment options. It is also important to recognize that there are many treatments being advertised online and elsewhere that report effectiveness with ADHD populations. However, many of them have not stood up to the test of research. This includes the Feingold diet, which involves removing all food coloring and dyes from one's diet, relaxation training, play therapy, vitamin therapy, and others as listed. It is important to note that while some of these approaches might have other health benefits to them, the evidence suggests that they do not have a significant impact on a child's primary symptoms of ADHD.